Welcome to a special episode of Get Better Today. I'm your host, Matt Mayberry. Today, we're diving deep into the concept of building an iron life with Mike Housey, a man whose journey embodies the epitome of mental and physical resilience. Mike Housey is a seasoned executive leader, certified leadership coach, and #1 Amazon best-selling author. As the current executive vice president and general manager of Southern Glazer's Wine and Spirits of Indiana, a division of one of America's largest privately owned companies, Mike recently led a $1.5 billion sales organization to unbelievable transformational results. His commitment to personal growth extends beyond the boardroom. He's also an accomplished Ironman triathlete and dedicated husband and father. Join us as we explore the transformative power of building an iron life, uncover Mike's remarkable story, and take away invaluable lessons to fortify our own path forward. This episode is not just about building strength. This episode is about unleashing your inner hero. Let's dive in. Thank you so much. Mike Housey.
Matt,
How you doing today?
doing good.
It's an honor and privilege to have you here on the show today. The first question I have for you is, throughout your successful career and journey, what would you say is the most valuable lesson that you've learned throughout your journey, and also that has made the most impact as it relates to your leadership journey, but also just a lesson that you still live out still to this day?
You know, I spent most of my career trying to be someone who I wasn't. I tried to be an image of someone I thought would be successful. So I think the biggest thing I've learned is to truly be authentic. And what's really helped me get there is humility. Humility's been a game changer for me. And, you know, in our society, you don't see a lot of it, but I do see glimpses of it starting to trend. And I think it's really important. I learned through humility that intelligence doesn't come with a job title, that people don't really care what you say or how much you know until they know how much you care. And even to be thoughtful about how you start a conversation. I always try to come into every conversation intentionally with two things. I usually focus on kindness and curiosity as kind of my go-to. And for work, it's, humility has taught me that the best way to solve a problem is to get a lot of people's fingerprints on the solution. And when you open the door of humility, ideas start banging around the walls. And, what comes out is bigger than the sum of the parts that went into it. At home, humility is taught me that the roots of relationships, and my wife has taught me a lot of this. We've been married for 32 years, coming up next month, that it's really about putting self-sacrifice, putting the needs of other people in front of yours. And when you do that, your love can really root and survive the storms that are going to come in everybody's life. And for me, humility has taught me to be happy by being great at nothing, which is the subtitle of my book, but also to become better at everything that matters.
And speaking of that, you wrote this great book, Iron Life, which was a #1 Amazon bestseller. I personally had the privilege of reading that beforehand, before it was released. Phenomenal book. Can you share how the idea of Iron Life started and the significance behind it?
So for me, it really started. So I got to tell you a story. I was at an award ceremony once on Ellis Island, and it was beautiful. The room was filled with music from the orchestra, and waiters were walking around with silver platters. Chefs from Manhattan were making the dinner, and it was spectacular. And I remember looking down, looking at the floorboards, and it was like an old farmhouse from 1800. And literally, all four of my grandparents stood in that room at one time or another, coming to America with nothing, but the shirts on their back, literally. But what they did, they didn't bring anything, but what they did is they left me a legacy. And I really boiled it down to love, forgiveness, kindness, and charity. And that's the legacy. That's the opening of the book. That is what I hope to pass on to my children and the people that read it. So that was the origin of it. When it comes to the title, Iron, I've done 4 Ironman triathlons. And so Irons, that's kind of how it started. And after my second Ironman, a lot of my friends were getting Ironman tattoos. And I'm like, that'd be kind of cool. But then I thought, I don't want to limit myself to be one dimensional. So I literally drew a heart. And in that heart, on the outside, I drew iron. On the inside, I drew man. And then I filled that heart with everything that was important to me, my family, my goals, my dreams. And that really kind of started the origin of the book. And the whole premise is to build yourself up to be the best person you can be so that you can bring more love into the world. And leading with love and in the world, in the community, most of all in your home. And when you give love, you get love back.
Love it.
That was yeah.
I always love, as an author myself who's written multiple books, hearing the backstory of that, of how that idea originated, how that came to fruition is always something I love to hear about, because there's always a deeper meaning behind that. People always see the finished copy of a book, but they don't see the rigorous work that goes into it beforehand to create that piece of work. So thank you so much for sharing that. Throughout your journey, and for everybody, by the way, who the name Mike Housey might be familiar, is because all of you that read Culture is the Way, Mike was actually featured in that book. In the very beginning, I talk about my journey with Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits of Illinois, and Mike was spearheading that as far as the cultural transformation and a lot of the work there. So for all of you wondering of where Mike Housey, that name might be familiar from, it's for all of you that read Culture is the Way. And speaking of that, your journey, one of the things that I'm always fascinated with, and have been really for the past 14 years, is really digging into people's backstory. What made them tick, the trials and tribulations they had to overcome, but really where the journey started for you. For you personally as a man, what's the backstory of Mike Housey?
So the backstory is, to me, it's really everything, because when I went through grade school, if I wasn't the last person picked on a team, I was second from last. I struggled immensely in school, but worst of all, I never clicked with my peers. I didn't have friends. I was alienated. I was lonely. And it was just this tremendous weight on me all the time of just this emptiness and loneliness and not fitting in, and really being ashamed of that. And I remember sitting in church one morning and feeling all this weight. And I looked up at the crucifix and I saw a picture of a person who was denied, betrayed, and ultimately humiliated on the cross. And I just felt this connection with Jesus at that moment. And I made a commitment. I think it was like in 7th grade. And it was, hey, God, you gave me a body, mind, and soul. Those are 3 things you gave me. And I'm going to make a commitment to you that I will never start trying to make the best and most out of my body, mind, and soul. And that started a contract. And it wasn't easy, but I never stopped trying and never stopped praying. And I've been able to turn every aspect of my life around. It's been an amazing journey.
Wow. And how would you say that not only that transformation, but how would you say in general your upbringing has impacted you right now as a man, but also as a leader? Is there anything that comes to mind as far as characteristics and really things that define that moment for you?
I would say, again, when I look at the legacy, my dad, very blue collar family, my grandmother, they're very poor, but the giving back, of literally feeding the poor. I watched my dad. He was in the catering business. We were driving home from work one day, and he had me loading up the car. He didn't want me to ask a lot of questions, so I didn't. And we literally pulled off on the freeway one day, and he got out on the highway and started running food up an embankment. And there's a bunch of people sleeping there. And he got in the car and he said, "You know what? I saw those guys. They look really cold. I thought they could use a hot meal." And I say, if I did that to my kids, I would have had a 3-hour dissertation about the whole thing. But for him, that was it. And my dad had some great friends too. His best friend, my godfather, was a fireman. They call him Wild Bill, but he gave me my first pair of tennis shoes. And at that time, also, Matt, like, I'll never forget, 1976, the movie Rocky came out, and Rocky wasn't a family member, but there's this guy, right, who is, just kind of a loser and left out and missed the bus in life. And all of a sudden, Rocky gets a second shot at life. And what does he do? He straps up his shoes. He cracks a bunch of eggs in the morning. He grabs his dog Buckus after Adrian gave it to him, feeds his fish, Cuff and Link, and he hits the streets, climbs the steps, punches the meat. And that's what I did with Wild Bill Bradley was his name. And I put my Brooks tennis shoes on and I just kept going. And I thought, one day I'm going to get my shot. One day Apollo Creed's going to come and I'm going to be ready for it.
Love that.
And so, yeah,
I love that. That's the power of inspiration, right? You can really extract it from anything, from the books we read, the podcasts we listen to, the movies that we watch. And I think for me, Rocky is obviously the whole series of Rocky, right? I think every single movie brings out a deeper lever of motivation, I think meaningfulness, at least for me in my life. And it seems like that's done the same for you as well.
Matt, it's even worse than that because even when we got married, like every morning, 4:55, my CD alarm clock would go off and it was like the theme of Rocky. I'm surprised I didn't get divorced in the first year, but yeah, so it's complete. And even the music, it's something about it that just pulls something from us inside.
And speaking of your backstory and just knowing you in general, but also reading the book, Iron Life, I really believe that the traumatic experiences of life, the challenges, the tribulations, the challenges that we go through, whether professionally or personally, are really not meant to devastate us or derail us from getting us to where we want to go. If we have the right perspective, those moments and experiences can be an accumulative effect to really help mold us and become a better version of ourselves.
Absolutely.
And I know for you, that one of those traumatic experiences, the day that you found out that your beloved wife, Marne, was diagnosed with brain cancer.
Yeah.
Can you bring me to that day that A, when you found out, and then B, what have been some of the lessons from that experience of not only learning of that diagnosis, but also the journey of overcoming that journey to where you guys are now?
Yeah. Wow. A lot to unpack, Matt. But I remember this beautiful sunny afternoon. I was at my son's baseball little league game, and my sister-in-law, who's a nurse, called me and said, "You got to go home and take Marne to the hospital right away." She was having some issues, and at this point, she started slurring her words, and I just kind of just absorbed it. I found my friend Kevin took Michael home, and I took Marne to the University of Michigan hospital. They started running tests. I spent the night, and the next morning, Marne insisted that I go home and take Michael to his kindergarten graduation. And she was devastated that she couldn't be there. So we went to this great party. And then the next day I went back and remember sitting in a room. There's a University of Michigan light flight helicopter coming down. And the doctor said that you have an oligodendroglioma. It's a very bad form of brain cancer. And so we didn't know if there's any other forms of cancer in the body. And thank heavens they ruled that out. And, we thought, hey, we can fight one battle, right? So through this journey, it was, Marne was just, courageous. So she chose to really put all of her faith and trust in God during this process. And, you have either a choice. Either you can go down the WebMD route and really kind of derail yourself with all the horrible things that can happen, or in Marnie's case, just put all of her trust in God. And what she found was, and she said if she had to do over again, she wouldn't have done it because so many people, friends, family, and complete strangers just did unbelievably just kind things, just little acts of kindness every single day. I don't even know how we put food on the table, and just literally people would just show up with meals. And I tried to keep the kids on their school schedule. And when Marne was going through radiation and chemo, she tried to be a great mom. So this love that poured in was tremendous. And the other thing we found, Matt, is that when chemotherapy is almost worse than the disease, and it's like that for some people, there's a whole nother world out there, subculture of people that are helping each other, trying to find holistic paths and cures. And, through God's grace, we found some amazing people. And one person that led us to really a cure. It's a holistic protocol. It doesn't work for everyone, but it worked for Marne, and it blew the doctors away. They couldn't really explain it. But I got a phone call. I saved a voicemail. I'm on like 8 iPhones since I got this call, Matt. But like it's 2014, and it's our nurse, Sandy Reamer, calling to say, I just want to let you know Marne has the all clear. And it's been 10 years this year. So it's been an amazing journey of faith and love and perseverance.
Was there ever a time throughout that experience where you didn't see a way out?
I do remember one time where, Marnie went on to, looked at the diagnosis online, and she broke down, and she remembers the time that I broke down. But, I think it was her desire to be so strong for the kids that she just never showed weakness. And again, it just came down to faith. You had to do something, right? So it was just complete surrender and complete commitment to the family. And so there's tough days, but neither one of us would take it back.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think it shows you too the power of having something to fight for. And oftentimes it's much deeper than just us personally beating something, whether it's a challenge or a disease. It's living for the people that we love and love the most and dearest. With that being said, Mike, what would you say for somebody going through something, whether it's something similar with a family member, whether it's maybe they're dealing with their own personal or professional challenge where they don't see a way out or they feel like their life's coming to an end? What would you say is something that has helped you and your family throughout that traumatic experience, but has obviously impacted your life in a positive way because you went through that? What piece of advice do you have for anyone going through a challenge or a trial or tribulation that has them feeling defeated right now?
So listen, we're all going to get hurricanes and tropical storms, and we're going to be tested in life, right? And it's not if it's going to happen, but it's when it's going to happen. So for us, whether it's a story that I told about, growing up and, this feeling of loneliness and being a loser, or Marnie's story of getting through this 4-year journey of, brain cancer, the common denominator is really faith, and it's connecting to God. And you gotta connect to something, right? So, through time, our faith has grown. It wasn't always this strong, but at this time, we've just found that the creator and savior of the universe is a great person to tether yourself to in difficult times. So, I love to go to morning mass. I say the rosary every day. I didn't think that was possible. I didn't think I could take a cold shower every day either, and I do that now. Marnie and I go to Eucharistic adoration together. I took 2 days off work, and we went to the Eucharistic Congress down in Indianapolis, which was absolutely life-changing in terms of spirituality. So, listen, you can look to a lot of things, and everyone has different ways to approach it, but, getting grounded and God is critical. And if you look at the Son of God hanging on a cross, I mean, it kind of tells you that you're going to have some difficult times, and ultimately, you hope to end up in heaven.
Yep. I always say, and I was raised on this saying, rock bottom builds more champions than privileged. And my father always used to say that when I was growing up. Obviously, rock bottom can mean multiple different things for many different circumstances. But I think that's the power of going through adversity, is not running away from it, but actually running towards it in a lot of ways and looking for the ways that we can develop and grow as men and as women and as human beings. I think there's so much power to be taken away and extracted from adversity and the challenges of life. And it seems like you and your family have done that and continue to do that because of those challenges.
Yeah. And Matt, that's part of the origin of the word iron and iron life too. Some people are like, why do you call it iron life? And there's a triathlete piece and the love, but iron is it's one of the strongest substances on earth. You can mold it. It can sustain high heat.
Yep.
And the only thing that could destroy iron is rust, its own rust. We all have iron running through our blood. And the only thing that can really stop us is our own self-doubt, our own fear, right? That's our rust. And through this book and this journey, this life, I'm just trying to help show people that there's a way to, prevent the rust. There's a way to take the rust off and just be that, just get up when you hit rock bottom, right?
Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. And speaking of Iron Life, back to Iron Life, you shared a little bit about how that title came to the forefront when writing that book. But what overall objective did you have for the reader? What message do you have for everybody who hasn't read Iron Life yet and they're thinking about it and it sounds intriguing? What did you want the main goal or objective to be for the reader to take away from that book?
So in the book, Matt, I use this analogy of an 8-person crew team. And I had a chance to meet an Olympic rower in the Seoul, Korea Olympics. I read Boys in a Boat by Daniel Brown, which is awesome. And so in this boat, the analogy is that every oar in an 8-person boat represents something that's important to your life. It's either a value or a relationship. And the idea is the more oars you can get in the water, the stronger you're going to be and the more fulfilled that you can be, the more love you can bring into the world, the more fulfillment you feel ultimately. So in my boat, I started with, that saying, put your oxygen mask on before assisting others.
Yep.
So the first 3 oars of my boat are body, mind, and soul. So the first one is my body, trying to, obviously gearing up for, I started with a mile and then I went to, 5K, 10K marathons and Ironman triathlons. So it was a journey of just building my body. And then my mind, being a lifelong learner, always trying to learn perspectives, different points of view, and just constantly just trying to be not necessarily smarter, but just more informed and more well-rounded. And then obviously the soul, just really deepening my faith. Christianity has an amazing roadmap to follow. And then there's like, even I have health as another oar, and it's separate than body because, and Matt, you've taught me so much in this regard, right? So fasting, I've done up to 72-hour fast as a way to recalibrate my body, but also to connect spiritually, which is a very powerful experience. 3 years ago, you gave me this Oura ring as a gift.
Yep.
Yeah.
Look at it.
Like my wife makes fun of me because every morning I wake up, she goes, "How did you sleep?" I'm like, "Hold on, let me tell you. I gotta go through all the diagnostics." But I had I decided that the way I was going to be successful is to cut sleep. So I ended up with pneumonia twice, shingles twice, and finally I'm like, okay, this isn't working. So that there's the health oar, and then my relationships, a husband, a father to my 3 kids, leadership, right? So we all know really successful people, great at something, right? And so many of these people have one big oar in the water, and their life is out balanced, and their boats are going around in circles.
Yep.
And the final thing about this analogy is that in an 8-person crew boat, there's only one person, the 9th person, that is looking forward, and it's called a coxswain, right? So the coxswain's in charge of keeping everybody on tempo, pushing them to a faster pace, and making sure that the boat goes straight and it's going to the finish line. And so my big question in the book for everybody is, who's your coxswain? Who's that person that's guiding your boat, that's helping you get your oars in the water, helping you synchronize those oars? And, while I would say many people have sat in that seat for me, certainly my father, my brother, my wife, day in and day out, it's God that's in my boat. And he's the one that's helping me get my oars in the water. And really the finish line is love, right? So it's like, how can I bring more love and in return get more love? And ultimately that's fulfillment. That's where happiness comes from. You can chase all these other things, but I think I boiled it down to that simple crew boat. And I break it down so people can kind of evaluate their own crew boat. Where are they? And where are their oars and who's guiding them?
That's so great. And another key aspect of Iron Life that I personally have found very intriguing. Can you share with the listeners or those viewing here on video, can you share more about the hero lessons? What is the hero lessons? And then how also can that apply directly to people's lives?
Yeah. So I got to tell you a story. I grew up in Detroit. I went to school in Detroit, and I was a freshman in college, and I was going to school all day. I was working 30 hours at night, and we just eclipsed 40 days without sunshine. 40 straight days. And something psychologically happens to human beings when they don't see. So I'm sitting again in the hallway waiting for my classroom to open. And, the floor's dirty. It's winter time. There's mud and water on the floor. The walls are gray. The tiles are gray. Everything's gray. And back in 1987 or 86, whatever, punk rock was a big thing. So people walking down the hallway look like a Cure concert, right? So now I'm just in my mind, just really ripping people and how they look, and I see this guy down the hallway, and he's running his hand up and down the wall, and he's way down there, and I'm looking at a few more people dressed in punk rock gear, and then this guy's getting closer, and his hand's running up and down. Now all my energy, my negative energy, is going towards this guy. What is this guy? What a weirdo, what a loser. And then he's got this giant backpack, and what's he going to do? Climb Mount Everest? And I'm just ripping this guy apart. And all of a sudden, he's getting almost across from me, and his hand swings into a classroom, and he stops, and he backs up, and he feels the wall for the room number. So here's the situation. The event is 40 days of gray. I'm working my ass off. I'm feeling sorry for myself. And the hero, I got to break it down. So the H stands for humility. The E stands for events in your life. A lot of them you have no control over. The R is your response to those events, and the O is the outcome, right? So the event is 40 days of gray, feeling sorry for myself. My response was just to rip on other people, and my outcome was just compounded misery. But the moment I saw that guy back up and feel the wall, like instantly humility hit me. And that's the most powerful piece. So then I had complete clarity. And from that day on, whenever I see myself or feel myself feeling sorry for myself, I stop and I think about that moment, and I choose a better response. Mm-hmm. I choose a response that says, you're incredibly blessed. Yes, this is very difficult. You'll get through it. Keep your head up. And by all means, build other people up around you. Don't try to elevate yourself by bringing someone else down. So that's the anatomy of in a real life example of a hero lesson, but we can use it all the time. Just evaluating. And when you go to bed at night, just think about what happened today. Like, what didn't sit well with you? What was that event? What was your response and the outcome? And then put your ego and pride aside and bring in humility and think, okay, I'm gonna be really honest with myself here. How was my response to the situation? And what you find over time, and mine was a dramatic story, is that when you see that event happen again, you are ready to choose a better response. There's a part of our brain called the amygdala. Mm-hmm. And this thing called amygdala hijack. Someone cuts you off in traffic and you want to flip them off, and that's everything's bypassing your frontal lobe. And it was great when tigers were chasing us back in the day, right? But we got to gain control over our amygdala, and this is an amazing way to do that. So when you see that, now when people cut me off, I say a little prayer for them. It took years to get there, but through that hero lesson, I was able to do that.
And how would you say that somebody, like in the real world, day to day, from a practicality standpoint, how can they start implementing that, into their own life?
So I'd say two ways, Matt. One is literally when you go to bed, just do like a little inventory and just reflect on that day. Effect on what happened, how you felt. There's usually something that didn't sit right or really gave you some joy, and just break down, like, and bring in the humility and say, what could I have done better, so that when this occurrence or something similar happens again, I'm ready to choose a better response. The other thing, I had a chance to golf with a NFL linebacker who played for Ohio State, and I knew that Ohio State was big into the E+R=O. And I was really excited to ask him about his experience, and he loved it. I mean, it was a huge part of the culture of the Buckeye football team. And, and I told him about the humility piece, and he loved it. And he said what he liked so much about it is that it's a chance in real time to kind of hit the pause button, try to bring in some humility and think about what you want the outcome to be. So, someone cuts me off, or, what do I want the outcome to be? Do I want to end up in an accident? I want to end up in road rage, right? And so if I'm really thoughtful about how I want this, I just want to get to where I'm going safely, right? So it helps me in the moment through humility, choose an R that says, fine, you're having a bad day, let's back off, right? So it can either be used reflectively or in real time. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does. And it's such a powerful, I think, tool to utilize in really, whether it's professionally or personally. I know for me personally, like you said, right? If someone cuts you off or you're stuck in traffic, it's very easy to kind of lose your mind and lose your temper and control in that moment. But I think the more you practice it, it's like with anything, right? The more you do it, the more you get comfortable with it, the more that patience grows. I know for me personally, being able to control the controllables, right? Being able to control the things that are in my ownership and span of control has been a game changer. Because if you look at 95% of what a lot of people stress about, or they're fretting over a mistake or something they may have done a week ago, over 90% of those things that they worry about, lose sleep over, it's not in their control, right? The only thing that we can control is really changing our perspective on what we can control right now, which is how we're going to show up and respond in the present moment. And I think for me, I've always been fortunate to have mentors and coaches in my life to teach me the value of your perspective truly does drive performance. How you see the world drives how you live your life. So I think that's a phenomenal lesson that we can all apply, whether it's personally or professionally. So thank you so much for sharing the hero lesson. But speaking of not only the hero lesson, but also just this theme of humility and iron life, obviously you've already shared with how that's impacted you as a man and in your personal life. How have all these ideas impacted you as a leader? Because you're an accomplished, seasoned executive leader, a certified leadership coach. I've had the privilege of partnering and working with you. And I see it in the day-to-day, right? You really, truly care about people. It's not simply just about rising through the ranks and collecting the accolades and where you sit in the company's org chart. It truly is valuing people and making a difference in people's lives. How has all of this impacted your leadership journey?
So along the way, one thing that really impacted me, and I think when I met you and started learning from you, there was like this immense synergy. And so when I was a senior in college, we had a student table at the Economic Forum in Detroit, and the author of In Search of Excellence, Tom Peters, was speaking.
Yep,
great book, timeless, right? And so I remember Tom talking about a story. The big three, Ford, GM, Chrysler would hire him because they had a problem. And Tom said what he did was he went onto the factory floor and he talked to the workers on the floor. He talked to the mechanics. He talked to the suppliers. He went into the office and he goes, and I put the pieces together and I solved the problem and I sold it back to the company. And then he said, you know what? Long pause. Said, I'm a multimillionaire. And Matt, I never forgot that. I mean, the answers to the problems are right there. Mm-hmm. They're in the building. People don't have the full context, so they can't put it together. But when you have the humility and care about people enough to ask them what the problem is, they'll tell you.
Yep.
And then when you also have enough humility and love for people and care to ask them, what do you think could get better? They'll also tell you. So by doing what Tom Peters did ourselves, right, that's how you create a super strong culture. I like the analogy, and I might do it at my next meeting, where everyone that walks in gets a puzzle piece. And I'm going to ask them to throw the puzzle on the table. And at the end, we're going to build it. And what I'm expecting to see is a puzzle with pieces missing because, some people forgot, or they're like, I don't really care. I'm checked out, right? This is stupid. And the whole message is that we all have a valuable piece to the puzzle. And if we feel like people don't care about us, we're not going to contribute our puzzle. And I'm talking about our talents now, right? If they feel like they're just a cog in the machine, I'm not interested. Or maybe they quit and stayed. That's a term you taught me. Yep. And I don't care about throwing my puzzle piece up there. So at the end, you're going to have a piece that looks maybe a little bit like Swiss cheese. And the thing is, no, everyone's super important. And we can only be our best when everyone has their puzzle piece on the table.
I love it.
And the leaders have to open the door for that.
Right. Just because we may not have the answers right now doesn't mean the answers aren't there.
Exactly.
I think one of the things that I've always admired and I think respected about your leadership, and I always say that it's a vastly underrated, I think, characteristic and competency as it relates to leadership, which is radical curiosity. I think having the understanding and realization that, hey, you might not have all the answers. That's fine, right? Even if you're the top person in the org chart, right? Like, it's fine to admit that right now you don't have all the answers. I think that I've always admired your ability to display curiosity and really search for answers, right? Search for solutions to problems. And I think that that's a huge leadership skill set that's not talked about enough. Radical curiosity.
Well, Matt, under your leadership, we built an entire cultural blueprint. And it was just that way, right? I remember I met with the whole commercial team. You met with the finance teams, and we went through this process, and it was curiosity. And when people start seeing that not only are you listening, it's not more just pretending, you're actually curious, but then when they start seeing byproducts of that, like, well, they listened, and now something is happening.
Now they're taking action on it.
Right, and they ask for ideas, the solutions, and I see those happening too. So then the buy-in starts to come, and the naysayers start to quiet down, and everyone goes around the table and they start working on it.
And speaking of leadership, what would you say are maybe the top 2 or 3 ways that your leadership has evolved over the years? In my latest book, The Transformational Leader, I talk about the evolving leadership dynamics, just like the workplace dynamics has shifted and evolved from just even 10 years ago, quite frankly, even 5 years ago. But how has your leadership changed from when you first started in your professional journey to right now?
I like to tell stories, Matt. So and that's where my lessons happen from, right? So I remember I had a new boss, and we were going into one of our big distributors, and my boss was like, "Hey, you got to really hammer on this or lay it on their payments," and it really wasn't my style. It's that aggressive, combative style, isn't it? But I acquiesced, unfortunately, and I went in there like a bull in the china shop. And we were right, they were wrong, and we got our way. We won the battle. But what ensued is just this horrendous relationship. It got so bad that I could be in the room with this guy, and he would say, "Hey, Matt, tell Mike that we're not going to accept this, and that here are the terms," right? And like I was right there, but he wouldn't say anything to me. And this relationship just got worse and worse and worse. So at this time, I saw Mel Gibson's movie, The Passion of Christ, and it made me reflect on my life. And it was the worst relationship I had by a mile in my life, and it just didn't feel right. So I invited this guy to lunch, his favorite restaurant, not knowing if he would accept the invitation. And he did. He came, and I said, "Listen, we have a horrendous relationship. It's 100% my fault. I started it, I caused it, and I'm here to apologize to you. I hope you accept my apology, but I understand if you don't." And I get kind of choked up thinking about it, because he accepted the apology. And I wouldn't say we became best friends, but I can tell you this: if my car broke down in the middle of the night, the guy would drive 3 hours to get me, So that was transformational in terms of, again, the theme of humility, and back to the legacy of forgiveness, right? And asking for forgiveness. Giving forgiveness, it's critical. You can have these feuds that go on forever between companies, and some people just like that adversarial, but when you can build trust, you can get so much done.
Trust is everything. You can't connect with people without trust, right?
No.
You have to form that development there before you can ever build and compound on trust. So that's a phenomenal example. And I think that it goes right into, let's briefly talk about culture, right? Because as I mentioned, you obviously were featured in my book, Culture is the Way. But right from the very beginning, you were what I deem an avid culture builder, where there's not necessarily an end date. It's a continuous focus on building a better team culture, better organizational environment where people can flourish and thrive and really become a better version of themselves, right? Not just at work, but also become a better man or a better woman. What has worked well for you as it relates to building culture and maybe not so well?
So, Matt, out of your book, I took this idea. I never heard of Leo before. So you talked about how the football coach at your alma mater, University of Indiana, had the saying Leo, and it stood for love each other.
Tom Allen.
And I got to have lunch meet Tom Allen. And you talked about David Novak's idea with the chicken.
Yep. Rubber chicken
award. And this idea, ever since I read the book, I mean, it really kind of percolated for 2 years. And in my new role in my job, I brought both to life. So I've created the Leo Award, and I have a little lion, like Leo the lion. And Leo stands for love each other. And peers nominate peers for going the extra mile, going above and beyond, and doing things that they don't have to do. And it is my favorite part of our monthly meeting, where people get to recognize each other. And what it's doing is just strengthening the fabric of our culture, because we're rewarding people who are going above and beyond, and recognizing that is what's important to us. And together, united we stand, divided we fall. So we're really breaking down silos, and we're uniting each other. And it's powerful. So Leo has been a huge piece of the culture. And it just came from reading your book, and I never heard of it. And then, I loved it so much. I set up a lunch with Tom Allen and spent a day with him, and it was terrific. So I think that's something that really worked. Things that don't work are top down, heavy handed. Here's what we're going to do, get it done. And when you take your heart out of it, and you don't really show that you care, you delegate it, you push it off. I think you got to be in the trenches, with your people, and you got to go through it. Otherwise there's no respect.
And how has that transition shifted for you? Being the head of sales at Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits of Illinois, to then going over and running the entire state of Indiana as the executive vice president and general manager. How has that transition been for you? Because obviously I know that you've had a lot of great relationships in Illinois. You've done very well there. You helped mold the culture there, right? As far as what that is now. But how has that transition been of kind of going into a different role, a different state, a different team, new faces you've never seen before? How has that been for you? And what has been maybe some things that have been challenged for you in ways of building culture and connecting with people on a deeper level?
So I started in October, but I didn't really physically get to Indiana until January of 23. My son was finishing high school, so my family was back in Illinois. So, Matt, I had 6 months of just in an apartment, 5 days a week. And I vowed I would never cook in my apartment. And I literally, every single night, I took groups of people all around the state of Indiana out to happy hours, lunches. We broke bread. We celebrated with the drinks that we sell. And my entire 6 months was just doing nothing but trying to really get to know the people and have them get to know me, what my DNA was like, what I cared about. And it really wasn't, none of those meetings was about performance. It was about understanding what they were going through. A lot of leadership changes, compensation model changes. There's a lot of things that, they were dealing with. And so that was, I don't know, that was just to me, game changing, because I felt like I connected at a personal level. I got out, I hit every corner of the state, and I don't know, I feel like they welcomed me. I feel like, an honorary Hoosier. It took me a while to get an Indiana license plate, because they're more expensive than Illinois, so I was cheap, and they're fired up when I finally got my Indiana license plate. But yeah, so that was just I don't know, just connecting on a human level.
Yeah.
And now I think we look at problems collectively, and we set up an advisory council where we really throw the problems on the table, and we look for solutions, and we have the people that can help bring those solutions to life at that table also.
That's amazing.
Yeah. And we did it. We conquered some big things in 23, went through a big, really positive growth in 24, but we're going to get that back on the table again, because if we can find issues before they really start brewing, or, smoke before there's a fire, that's how we win together.
100%. And I think that's such great advice, though, I think, because a lot of the listeners are executive leaders of medium to large size organizations. And I think that for anyone, whether you're transitioning into a new role, or now you have a new team leading a new business unit, or have new direct reports, or even switching jobs entirely, I think that there's so much value in kind of what you said the first 6 months, though, of taking people out to dinner, connecting with them on a very human level, first and foremost, before you ever started talking about the X's and O's and objectives and the vision of where you wanted the company to go, right? I think there's so much value in that, because I think it's more important now than ever before with the technological advancements that we've seen, the AI evolution. At the end of the day, business is and will always be about people.
Absolutely.
And I think that you can never underestimate that. And I think that there's so much leadership gold in what you did those first 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah. You can, it's like momentum. You can't see it, but you can feel it. And I can just feel like this momentum brewing. And it's good. I'm super excited what's going to come next. I feel like we can conquer anything together.
Absolutely. And throughout your journey, rising through the ranks professionally, becoming the great transformational executive leader that you are today, impacting hundreds, if not thousands of people's lives on a very personal level, helping people get promotions and go throughout their evolution professionally. One of the things about you that I don't think quite a lot of people may know about, unless they really know you, is that you've also managed to keep the core tenets of your personal life very intact. As you said in the very beginning, right? There's a lot of people who may be very ambitious, may even be very successful, but maybe in their personal life, they're the most hated person. Or maybe they're the most hated person in their own household, which to me, that's the ultimate failure. You're loved publicly, but you're hated in your private household. How have you been able to manage your professional journey while also keeping those core tenets in your personal life intact?
And you just became a father, Matt. Congratulations.
Thank you.
I had 2 daughters and then a son. And I remember reading a book that said that your daughter's self-esteem, first and foremost, is going to be formed on watching the relationship between her father and her mother. And so I just remember thinking that every day when I walk into the house, I'm being observed, probably unconsciously, but I'm being observed. And not that I had to change, my demeanor, but it was always ever present that this relationship with my wife and how I treat her is going to directly impact probably my daughters for the rest of their life. And that was really critical. And then just connecting, with my kids, when we go to church and say the Our Father, we hold hands, right? And we have this thing where I'll squeeze, "Do you love me?" 3 times, and they'll squeeze back, "Yes, I do." And then I'll squeeze, "How much?" And then they'll, with their little hands, they'll squeeze you as hard as you can, and you grimace, and it's just this connection, right? So we could be anywhere, and I could just do the hand thing, and we could tell each other that we love each other, and nobody else knows, right? It's just this quiet thing.
Wow.
So I think that's a big piece of it.
And what advice though? Because I think you're a shining example of that. I think that is a huge misconception. I think professionally and in the corporate world, right? I feel like that a lot of people feel like you have to sacrifice your personal life or your family to get to where you want to go or rise up the ranks. Right. And obviously, right, I mean, we all have to sacrifice, right? For every level of achievement requires a greater level of sacrifice. But I think that family isn't one of them. So what piece of advice just do you have, something very practical that somebody can keep in the forefront of their mind as they move forward? So
what I did, Matt, is I took what was important to me, whether body, mind, soul, whatever things I wanted to work on. And I said, okay, between 5 a.m. and 7 a.m., nobody expects anything of me at all. My family's sleeping, work is unengaged, and I have this window where I can do anything I want. So if I have the discipline to go to bed early and get up early, which most of the time I'm pretty good at, then I have this window where I can really get fulfillment. And, whether it's, working out or reading or writing that book, right? It's my window where I charge my batteries. I get my oxygen mask on. I get my oars first few in the water, right? So with that done, then the rest of it's a lot about sacrifice. It's a lot about putting other people's needs in front of yours, whether at work or at home. And especially at home, right? It's just having that humility that, listen, you're a dad and you're a husband, and this family is critical. So, figuring out how to get to the games, how to throw the ball, I read my girls the entire Harry Potter series, the entire thing. I had voices for Dumbledore and Hagrid, and then Michael came along. We did Percy Jackson and Aragon, and just, you can't substitute time. And the last thing I'll say, Matt, is, my advice to people is, if you have faith, teach your children the faith, because in this world, they're not going to get it from anywhere else. I had a friend of me said recently, "I'm good. I'm sending my kid to a Catholic school." And I'm like, "No, you're not good. What they're going to learn there is woefully short of what needs to be taught. And it has to start with the dad and being reinforced by the mother." And that's just the bottom line. If you don't talk to your kids about faith, the morals, the values that you hold, you can pretty much count that they won't carry that on.
Yep.
And that's harsh, but it's true.
I mean, listen, just like leadership, you hear me say 1,000 times already, until the leaders go first, no one else is going to follow suit, right? It all starts when the leaders first model that behavior. The same thing with parenthood. I think that I'm a big believer in that values are not taught, they are caught. How are you behaving every single day when no one's even watching, behind closed doors? The conversations that you have with your spouse and significant other, how you treat them, how you respect them, it's all a cumulative effect of how children are raised. And that's even what I've learned from even some, yes, I am a new father, right? But I have learned from some pretty extraordinary people. I think that the importance of that. So I'm very excited for that. And thank you so much for sharing those nuggets of wisdom there. And speaking of keeping those core tenets in your life intact, despite continually having these ambitions, one of the things that I'm a huge advocate of, and you know this, and I know that you are as well, is what is your daily routine? What habits, what rituals do you have to really set you up for a positive day and to help you thrive? Is there anything that you want to share as far as what has the role of habits and routines played in your life? And if you would be willing to share kind of what some of those habits are, that would be great.
Yeah, for sure, Matt. And I'll give you a couple examples. So when Marne was recovering from her surgery and chemo and radiation, we went down this a lot of these different protocols I talked about, and one was really getting to all organic. And I vowed to make her a organic green juice every single morning. Well, I ran every morning. That was just something I did, as a training for things. So my first thing was, create a vision, right? I want my wife to be healthy. I want her to heal. And then that was one. Number two is I'm going to make a commitment that I'm going to shop for the produce. I'm going to organize 6 bags of, the different vegetables. So in the morning I can get up and I can make her a green juice. And then I would go running from there. So I linked it to a part of my day. I committed to this vision, and then, I kind of stepped back, and I think the big thing is like, how do you feel when you do this? And yeah, sometimes I feel exhausted. I feel worn out, but deep down there's a sense of, man, I am doing something. I'm making a contribution that is important, right? It's important to Marne and our family. I think there's another piece, and I'm huge on micro habits, right? So while I'm juicing, I got my headphones on and I'm listening to audiobooks or news or podcasts, something to educate me. And then I would throw in these, I would swallow a cube of garlic or a clove of garlic, wash it down with apple cider vinegar just because it was like gritty. And I did pulling where you put coconut oil in your mouth and you get rid of toxins. And I did all these things while juicing. And today I'm not really training for anything right now. We got a lot going on at work, but I wake up every day. I'm following different, health people. So I start with my feet on the ground, connecting to the magnetic pole of the earth for 10 minutes. I'm on day 180 of Duolingo, learning Spanish. So I'm grounding, I'm doing Spanish, micro habits. Then I do Wim Hof breathing, which is a huge part of my ritual.
That's huge. I love it.
For 3 years, right? And then, and right now the sun comes up about 6:40 in the morning, so I can do Wim Hof while looking at the sun and getting that vitamin D into the, from the morning sunshine. Then I do my workout, usually kind of a HIIT routine right now, some weights, and I do a cold shower every single day. I didn't think that was possible, like I said earlier, but every day it's a cold shower, and then on the way to work, it's the rosary. When I show up at work, that routine is unbelievable. I've grounded, I got vitamin D, I've done breathing, I've worked out, and I've connected with God. And I just walk in ready to.
And just like the title of your book, Iron Life, I mean, I always say that how you start your morning is almost like putting that body armor on for the day.
Oh,
right. I mean, there's going to be things that irritate you or get under your skin. And it's how you start your day is how the rest of your day is going to go, usually most of the time. So I think I'm a huge believer in routines and rituals and really have been my entire life. And it's hearing you talk about how those have been very beneficial for you. I always tell people is to not overcomplicate the process, because it's very easy to say, geez, Mike, I can't do nearly half the things you just talked about. But I think it starts small.
Yeah.
It starts small, start where you are. But what is something that you could be doing to feed your mind, to nourish your soul, to feed your body with really positivity to help you have a thriving day?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we all brush our teeth, right? Link something off of that connected to something that's important to you. And again, in that crew boat, where's your boat heading? Where do you want to go? What's your finish line look like? These are questions that a lot of people don't have answers to. And
Absolutely.
and you got to think about where, what's the purpose?
Absolutely.
What are you going to contribute? What are you going to leave behind? What are you going to take with you?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I think if you are struggling with any rituals or habits to start instilling into your morning, I always suggest to start with something as simple as an attitude of gratitude. I use the 5-minute journal. You can purchase that on Amazon, but it's simply writing down 3 things that you're grateful for every single morning. I think having the attitude of gratitude is how you build the abundance of wealth, and, just really just to set yourself up for a successful day, to remind yourself every single morning of what you're truly grateful for really helps to put you in the right perspective. So,
yeah, I remember the very first time I met you, we did that seminar where you were the keynote speaker. And I remember that was one of the big things that you taught the group. And and to me, that's incorporated in the whole breathing ritual, is that gratitude. And no matter how bad things are, a really good friend said, if the whole world stood shoulder to shoulder and threw up all the problems in the air, you'd reach for your own. And first I thought, but then you walk around the world and you're like, yeah, no, you're right. I'd be jumping as high as I could to grab my own problems back. Right?
that's a great one.
Yeah.
That's a great one. Wrapping up here in a second, Mike, one of the final questions I do have for you, how has Ironman and the triathlon experiences benefited your life from a leadership perspective, but also personally, right? Excluding the physical aspect from it, how have those experiences benefited you as a leader and then also in your personal life?
Martin Luther King has this quote that I love, and he says that something like, if you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But by all means, keep moving. And I feel like from where I came when I was young, like I didn't have any friends. I didn't even know I had any friends. I mean, people went out of the way to alienate me and leave me out and do mean things. And I just like, okay, I can either crumble or I can go, right? I can try to persevere. I can crack the eggs and go for a run like Rocky. And the Ironman just teaches you that there's going to be a lot of grueling days, but that Martin Luther King quote is just so important. You just have to keep going. Yep. Crossing the finish line at 14 hours, 140.6 miles was absolutely grueling. And it was just every ounce of energy you have. But, I connected to a vision and a goal, and I went through these habits. So I had a training regimen, and I followed the regimen, and I got up on days I felt horrible. And sometimes it's surprising. I tell my kids, just show up at the proverbial track, whatever it is. And sometimes you'll be amazed. You might feel horrible and you have the best workout of your life. And other days you get there and you just grind it out. But every one of those workouts just makes you a little bit stronger mentally and physically.
Absolutely.
Every day, man, I hop in a cold shower, and every day I'm like, am I ever going to get used to this? And I never do. I mean, it is as shocking every day today as it was the day before. But I do feel a sense of there's reasons I'm doing it, and I'm connecting to the reasons why, and I feel better because of it.
And it builds up the resiliency. I think that, speaking of that, I say the same thing. When I get into a cold tub of, let's say, 34 degrees, right, I always think to myself, am I ever going to get to a time and experience where this is just, I'm good with it. No, the answer to that is no. But I think there's so much value in that, because I always tell people, never, ever, 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 ever stop doing hard shit.
Yeah.
And the more you can do that, my wife, my friends, they all think I'm crazy in a good way. But I had a mentor once he was a coach, very dear friend of mine, made a tremendous difference in my life. But he always said that the harder you train and go in private, the more you're going to go out in public and on the victory stand. And what I took that as is that the more I do hard stuff, the more I do things that I don't want to do, the more I do things that are going to basically bring me out of my comfort zone, the better I'm going to be able to handle adversity, the better I'm going to be able to handle the death of loved ones, the more I'm going to be able to handle adversity and failure. So I think it's the more you can do hard stuff, the better off you're going to be, as far as whether that's dealing with adversity, adapting to change, whatever that may be, or just the transitions of life. But I think there's so much wisdom to be found in doing hard shit.
Yeah. And Matt, you are a role model for doing hard shit. And what's interesting about you're extremely humble about it too. And like I learn about what you do in increments and in conversations over time. I mean, that you're just very, very low key about it. But it's so inspiring because there's some things like, I don't think I can do this, but Matt does it. If Matt can do it, maybe I can do it, right? So just the hope that if you can do it, there's a shot I can get it done. It maybe take me a while, right? But there's a shot that I can do this. If you can.
Iron sharpens iron.
Iron sharpens iron. That's it.
It's fact.
Absolutely.
Very last question for you, Mike. What is your purpose moving forward? What is the overarching objective, your purpose moving forward?
So, I view my job as a husband, as a father, as a person. My ultimate job, Matt, is to try to help my family get to heaven. And be someone like you are that they will want to look up to and they want to say, I think he's got it figured out. And I think that this is the way to go. And I think this is the way to treat people. And I think that I'm gonna give love and it's gonna come back to me. And I'm gonna forgive people 7 times, 70 times, right? Our society is more of an eye for eye, right? I'm gonna take time and I'm gonna do something to help someone else's life. My brother helped him start this charity. We've taken 110 kids out of a failing public school system and put them to the most elite school in Michigan. And they all go on and they go to college and they come back and they give. And it's, I don't know, that's, that to me, that's just a big piece of it. So I don't know, that's my ultimate goal, Matt. I won't know if I'm successful till long after I'm dead, but hopefully.
Well, you've done a tremendous job up to this point. Thank you so much for joining the show. It's been an honor and privilege to chat with you today. And thank you so much for sharing not only your story, but all the experiences that you've had throughout your life, whether personally with your family, the trials and tribulations that you guys had to overcome, which ultimately made you guys stronger, that you obviously shared here today, but also just the leadership. Because I feel like that so many people continually really misunderstand that you can still demand excellence, you still can push and strive for greatness, while also loving and serving and caring for people.
Matt, I think the best definition of leadership I ever heard was a leader is a person who has followers, right? And
you can't lead if no one follows you.
You can't. And there's 2 reasons that people will follow you. They'll follow you because they have to. In the Roman army, you ever heard of the word decimate?
Yep.
Decimate, right? So the decimation happened when Caesar lined up all of his troops and killed every 10th person because someone showed cowardice or retreated or whatever, right? And you followed because of fear. But then you look at someone like Martin Luther King, Gandhi, who lived with his people, Jesus Christ. These are people that have followers because they love them, because they want to. So you can, no one's going to be Caesar and no one's going to be as good as Gandhi, right? But where are you going to be in that continuum as a leader? I think deep down, we all want to be someone, we all want to have someone we want to run through a wall for. And we would all love to be someone that people would run through walls for. And that is the key. It's you're not going to do it with a hammer. It's got to be through love and caring. Doesn't mean you can't have tough conversations,
right?
You got to have them. Otherwise, if you're not communicating, if you're not setting expectations, you're not holding people accountable, the iron doesn't sharpen iron and everything falls apart.
I always say the best coach I ever had, they'll certainly MF you.
Yeah.
Every chance they get. It's what they did behind closed doors that really gives you the opportunity. That's why you're not closed off when they do MF you, or when you do make a mistake and they're on you and correcting you and hard coaching you. So absolutely, I couldn't agree more. So Mike Housey, thank you so much for joining us. Everybody, please go get a copy of Iron Life. Check this book out. It will make a difference in your life. I really enjoyed this book. I know you will too. Thanks for coming, Mike.
All right, Matt. Thank you.